Have you had a panel picture? Have you had a panel? Okay. Well done. Thank you. Okay. You're welcome. Okay. You're all sticking with it, which is really good to see. So thank you very much for that. And we've lost a few people going off for flights and whatever, which is totally understandable. But we're coming into the last panel session now, which I think I hope you will manage to stay with us, because this is a panel that we have quite regularly at the conferences, which is trying to bring together everything that we've been talking about and really then pull that together and talk about the future. So we're going to have what I call a sort of a reflection on the last 20 years and a look at the future. So if I can ask my panelists to come up and join me, please, and we'll go through the introductions. 1, 2, 3. Am I missing somebody? Oh, here he is. Come on, William. Anywhere, don't worry. You don't have to sit alongside the picture, that's fine. Yeah.
And where is Adam coming? Yes.
Adrian's always one for making an entrance.
Yes, in fact. Bravo, Adrian.
Good. Well, as I say, we've got to keep this sort of very open, and we're not doing presentations and stuff. It's not appropriate for this panel, but I've really put these guys on the spot, as I like to do, and you probably worked that out by now. I'm not a great one for scripting. I'd much rather just have a conversation and let it flow where it needs to flow. So that's what we're going to do. We may not take up all the time allocated today, because I know a lot of you have been with us for a long time. I have to get on with journeys, and I'd like to just make a few closing remarks. So we'll go wherever we need to go, and if they all dry up, I shall send them off, and we'll close the conference. But we want to really, just a couple of things really. Obviously, it is our 20th anniversary this year, and we have asked Joachim Bartels, who some of you saw at our welcome reception online. He's not been able to join us for this event. But we did ask Joachim, with all his knowledge, to document the last 20 years. So we do have on our website that document, so it's a chronology. It's almost a bit of a bio for Joachim in a way, and that he's done that, and we're publishing that for members' use on the website. So those of you who are members, please go to the website, pick up the post and read the document, because it's quite insightful and there's a lot in there. And that's why I want to really kick off the panel by reflecting on what's happened in the last 20 years. We don't have to cover everything, ladies and gentlemen, but just give us a reflection on a couple of key developments in the last 20 years. What's happening now? What do you see now? And then really the key thing for all of you as a takeaway, which we like to give as a bit of a benefit for being here, is what's coming up. So those are the three simple categories that we're going to have a look at over the next however many minutes. And we're very fortunate in the sense that we can look at it from both the consumer side and also the business side, because obviously we've got William and Anand, who are conveniently sat together on the consumer side over there, but I know William is also involved in business information, so is TransUnion with Anand and that, but I'm trying to get a bit of that separation. And then Adrian and Dorata are obviously from a business information side. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to sit down, and hopefully I don't have to say very much, because you're going to have a good discussion amongst yourselves. So let's just kick off then, Dorata, ladies first, of course, with your view on what's happened in the last 20 years. What's really, not that I'm saying you've been with the industry for 20 years, of
yes.
course. You're far too young for that.
And not in my life in the last 20 years. I think our panel is quite tough, because this is the last panel, and a lot of interesting things were said already, because practically the whole conference It's about what's going on and what is the current situation in business. So I was thinking what to tell to such a great audience of experts, because you are all experts sitting here. And I wanted to share with you my experience when I joined 20 years ago COFAS. When I joined 20 years ago COFAS as regional director for Central and Eastern Europe for business information and debt collection, one of my first tasks, which I was given by the board, was to automatize business information production and look for an efficient tool for OCR, because we were facing a lot of manual work. And I think, Adrian, you will be with me. Yes.
Absolutely.
What was 20 years ago? So 20 years ago, when I started to be in charge of business information, I could not believe, when I was now reflecting, how was the information reports production process. And I remember there were 5 teams to produce a report for customer on B2B. Maybe it's different, depends on the region, but in Central Eastern Europe region, we were not so advanced technologically. So guys, what we had to face? First, somebody taking faxes. There was a fax machine, do you remember? We were getting by fax list of orders. What are the reports to be produced for the customer? Then there was call center calling companies to get the information about. And of course, companies were sending faxes. So again, somebody picking up fax. Then there was a person typing the data. So we were employing lots of students to type the data from the fax machine that came to. So it was manual data processing, then analysts manually assessing the score. There were no score systems, and yes, now everything is automatized. So the financial analysts were people with very high level of experience, graduated from financial analyst studies. And finally, when the report was ready and the financial analyst, I remember like today, was having such a booklet of documents to review, and then something to be found in the email, something found to be found in the internet, additional information. And when the report was ready, it was going again to the student to fax to the client. Some of the clients had email. Some of the clients were thinking about some integration, like from banking sector. But this was our reality 20 years ago, wasn't it? And without GDPR legislation, additionally.
Yes, if you go back 20 years, I think I started Worldbox about 25 years ago. But when we started, I'd already been through some of those experiences with Dun & Bradstreet, from hanging paper files for each record on a company, but developing an IBM 36, and nobody really knows what that was, probably here today. And then developing a Novell network system and bringing all the software down onto that with workstations. But when we'd started Worldbox, we had the internet, email existed, and we had the good fortune that we'd had these experiences behind us. And we started using Novell servers at the time, but we also started on the web. We were using Sun systems in Technopark in Zurich to access and store all our data at that point in time. So it was maybe a little further ahead of some of the people, and we had the advantage because we were starting up at this time. I've always been maybe a bit ahead of the curve on the technology side because I've loved it so much and I have a deep interest in it, and it sort of motivates me into the next stages. But We had Oracle at the time, 20 years ago. We were writing in Cold Fusion at the time, but had the advantage that we probably started at a time when I'd been through the D&B experiences, I'd done these things before, and it was like the third time around with computerization, so it gave me a sort of kickstart there.
We also had a system, icon tool, that we were storing all the data, so the report could have been, generated in digitalized form. However, data collection was quite a painful process. Although there was no GDPR regulation yet, yes, because it entered into force in May 2018. I'm sure that for the consumer business, it must have been even more difficult, right, than for the B2B.
Yeah, so I've been in this industry for about 12 years, so not as long as both of you. And my focus has largely been around fraud and identity and risk and KYC. I remember when I joined, if you look at really, the things that were around in the marketplace, it was identity verification, which was looking at fairly basic attributes, what I call as offline attributes, right? So things like your name, address, date of birth, your national ID, like a SSN number in the US as an example. And that's what we would check as a credit bureau against. And then, if we find that there are not matches, then we would look at things like knowledge-based authentication, which is where you get asked some questions about yourself to prove that it is who you say you are. And so we come a long way from that, certainly, but that was 12 years ago, right? It was largely about offline attributes of identity. And there was obviously fraud, but there were basic silo checks that we would do. Now, technology obviously has evolved, and that has led to a lot of improvements in terms of how we do ID verification and fraud prevention and such. But that was really the state at that point of time.
Interesting. William?
I think all of you deserve a prize for staying on till now. 20 years ago, I was a lot younger, but a lot of things have changed. Some of you look quite young, so I'm sure if you went through the Asian financial crisis in the late 90s, that was the harbinger of credit bureaus in Asia. So within the last decade, I think there were 3 events that defined the bureau industry, 3 crises. If you remember the SARS crisis from 2003, thereabouts, you have the GFC towards the end of the 2008 and thereabouts, and of course the recent COVID-19. So what happened during these 3 crises, obviously for business owners, for all of us, I'm sure, there was always a concern about the impact on our business. I know along the way, technology helped us to have BCP and everything else fell into place nicely, but there was always that overriding concern on how it would impact our business. Through the 3 crises for us, and I believe it's for all the bureau operators and information business providers, we did not experience a dip in performance, financial performance. Rather, and on the contrary, the business continued to grow. I don't think it was because we are good. There were probably a few factors, low unemployment, the government's role in preventing a fallout, and of course the infamous low interest rate environment from 2009 all the way with the QEs, which for a non-economist, I'm still not sure whether that was a good thing after the first round. But all that came together to ensure that we all survive the 3 crises. I'm sure there'll be more to come, but the reality is that in our business and for our business, we are what analysts like to call, we are defensive stocks. So we will always strive, no matter on what side of the coin. We had quite a big dip in terms of new sales, new application, but the review volume went through the roof, right? And I believe it's the same for all of you. Now, those were the 3 crises. There were other things that kept us and kept me awake during these 20 years. The first was blockchain. I almost fell off my chair one morning when I woke up. I read a press statement on a speech done by a significant person in Singapore saying that Bureau is going to be operated on blockchain. Now, I'm not concerned about the technology. I was very concerned about the structure of the business the moment it went through the blockchain route. So there was one. We have been talking a lot about open banking. I know our friends from Brazil shared, and I'm not sure whether the gentleman is still around, a very impressive performance to date with, 62 million consent. I'm not sure whether the consent is one time or there's an expiry. There's a 40% shared data, but I think the reality is that beyond that 48%, to hit 55%, to hit 60%, is going to be extremely and more difficult. And I think he mentioned also that a lot of that 48% are from the smaller banks, because the big banks, the dominating banks, are not going to be too willing to share. So many countries in this region have also latched onto this open banking concept. So they've created info data exchange, financial data exchange, call it by whatever name. It's always contribution from a few established industry players, limited history on information that's provided. And the net result is that it is something which is really not very workable. So why were we concerned? Of course, if open banking is taken to its natural logical conclusion, that is a real threat to our business, right? Especially for the bureau operator. But so far, what we're seeing is that it is a almost insurmountable task to have a full, comprehensive, open finance structure. Now, I was having a discussion with some players yesterday. So instead of trying to create a new open banking concept, and this is just to throw at all of you here, why isn't anyone thinking of building the core not from scratch, but using a comprehensive bureau, build it sideways with other data, and I think you're going to achieve that outcome in a shorter space of time than to build everything from scratch, to have to rely on all the dominant banks, dominant insurers, and everybody else to load in the data, and you slowly, painfully build up the base. But if you have already a sufficient core, like a bureau, maybe that's going to be workable. You will not be the 100% open finance concept that people are talking about, because I know a lot of governments are still struggling with getting the framework in place, because there is not going to be unanimous consent on how it's going to be built. So maybe that's something for the audience and for everyone to think about while I stop and pause here.
No, that's very useful, William. Thank you. And brings me to a question, really. I suppose, has the business model of all of you changed in the last 20 years? So I'm not sure it has. And I remember we had a speaker last year in Bangkok, Gurchan, who proceeded to tell us that nothing's changed really, and nothing is going to change. And I'm somewhat sceptical about that, but I do take his point. Has it really changed in the business information world, in the consumer world? And it picks up a bit on what William's saying, because there are some catalysts for changes which could be. But I'm just interested to know, do you think it's changed?
The basic, not. I don't think so. All the key ingredients that we needed 20 years ago are still there in many cases. What the add-on is the alternative data, if you want, and the additional sources that you can leverage into that, but the core is not. And it's interesting listening to conversations this morning on technology and on what's being done. Many of the things, of the tools that are available on the data extraction, the collection, are helping to enable us to do things much faster. The time between, somebody mentioned financial statements being 12 months old. I think, yes, it's an issue where if you can get quarterlies, it's going to play a role. the need of more current information on a faster basis is there, but the roots are still very much the same. And I think the challenge for us today is, instead of selling off the databases or researching to the databases, and we research every country in the world with our team, so therefore some countries are really more difficult to get. You have the language issue, which we talked about this morning, but the decision-making for many of our clients is to have that data as up-to-date as possible, which is a very difficult job, also in the B2B sector, in some countries in the world. In others, not. So in Europe, it's very good. So it's a more of a, that's the challenge, is to how to get that data and to be able to deliver it to the client, that they can make their decision on a more current basis of data and not have to wait to have it researched. Yes, there's a lot online today, but one wonders how old that data really is behind it. We've tried to close the gap where we do many countries within a 24-hour period. This is B2B, to have current data, but that's going to get even tighter if you want. So that's what I think the challenges are. Plus, we have the advantage of the additional data, alternative data in its various forms that we can take in and take into account of.
I agree with Adrian that the basics are the same. However, now the process has changed a lot. Yes, so everything is automatized. We are now having APIs, data blocks, of course, automatized scoring models. So we use AI in scoring models like gradient boosting model and so on. There is, we are all familiar with big data, robotics, data lake. These are the terminologies that did not exist before. Yes, data science, data intelligence, integrating different sources of information, multi-sourcing, dual sourcing. And in our case, more than 85–90% of orders are processed without human being touching the order. Yes, so the data is processed online as the the system is connected to multiple data sources, which are updating data every day, every second, every minute, whenever the data is available. So the whole process has changed a lot. And I believe that also legal framework we cannot forget about. Yes, like Stephanie mentioned about this during her speech. We have a lot of regulations, GDPR, cybersecurity, DORA now for companies like ourselves. So although the data is becoming more and more available, automatized, the automatization, it's perfectly aligned and perfectly implemented in the delivery process and data collection process. But there are new fears linked to regulations, yes, regulatory aspect. What can we process? What can we deliver? How can we share the information? Can we or cannot? We cannot, yes, because these are some questions. Is this legitimate interest or it's beyond legitimate interest? So even if companies are using AI, are using lots of technology, I think that this human aspect and regulatory aspect, it's something new and it's not easy to manage, especially if information provider, it's not providing data only about one country, but globally. Then globally, it's really very difficult to manage all this regulatory framework, I believe. This is a new challenge for business, I believe. And this is what you also shared during your panel in a very interesting way.
Well,
so something very similar from a TransUnion and an identity perspective. I think the business models have not changed. There are obviously differences in how we approach things now. When I joined TransUnion 7 years ago, it was largely each market doing what they needed to do from a market landscape, from a competitive pressure standpoint. The basic solutions were fairly similar, but there was, independent working between these markets. Certainly in areas, whether it's credit scoring or, identity and fraud prevention, there's a lot of commonality in terms of how we create our products and solutions. So that is certainly not only at TransUnion, but other companies as well. I've started to see a commonality in terms of how they approach these solutions and products and then push it out into the different markets. Right. Obviously, there are going to be variations from regions to region and countries to countries, but that is, part of having a product adapt to the different market needs. But the underlying fundamental product remains the same. So those are some of the changes that certainly I see.
Thank you. I'm going to throw a real wobbly in now. Has data got any value left? Has data got any value left in it?
Oh, yes, most definitely.
What value is that then?
And the more difficult it is to get, the more value it has.
Okay.
It's new gold, like it was said yesterday, yes? This is value for itself. We believe it's really good asset to have data.
And the reason I mention it is, sorry to interrupt you, the reason I mention it is obviously there was a theory a long time ago that, data was just commoditizing and it was all about innovation. And I actually see a slowing in innovation and new products, which is quite interesting in some ways. And when I look at it, I do see some product development, but it seems to be iterative. I don't see any really new, but maybe I'm jumping ahead of my agenda here, but I'm just intrigued about, that view of that data versus the, added value.
I think it's how data is used today to make decisions. I think if you look back, people used to buy credit reports, but they were making other decisions from a credit report, but they still kept on buying the credit report. Today, you can tune more with the data that a party requires to make that decision. And also the price factor is a major role. But one thing I'd like to pick up on here is we talked about synthetic data several times the last few days. And I don't know how many of you know Anthony Scriviano, but he was a data scientist for Dun & Bradstreet. And he always used to say garbage in, garbage out. And he said the acceleration of error, the more times you multiplied it, became so immense that the data was useless. And this is my concern with the synthetic data, and we've had a couple of conversations today on that. So the organic data, the raw data itself, is what remains of high value. But then take it further, because you need, for instance, ourselves, we take company registered data as purchased or as taken from company registers, and we store it. And then we, how do you say, I always use the German word, yes, excuse me, but we refine that data and structure that data, get into structured databases so that you have common data across the world, for instance. However, is that necessary today with AI? And we have a couple of processes where we've actually trained Gazette data, which is text data, to extract from an OCR, and we put it in an engine which only looks at the data in the engine, but can, at the end of the day, extract structured data from it that we can apply. But even that is, if you look into tomorrow, the raw data is of value, and we have to give people the ability to interrogate it in the way they want to. And then it becomes even more value to that decision-making party.
To add to what you said, yes, data has value. It's a very big asset. And this Industry 4.0 and technology, of course, it's super important. However, human being, it's also very important in this whole process. At COFAS, although we are using all latest technologies, we use AI with data lake, big data, all what you say, we are familiar with data science, but we still have 700 people globally, data analysts, looking at the data. So if our great scoring models trained with AI score the company and there is an upgrade of the score, 2 notches up, 2 notches down, it goes automatically to a human being. Why did this happen? Because just the inflow of data from different sources, it's changing the score. But our clients and we ourselves, we don't want the score going up and down like this. We wish to understand what's behind. And to understand what's behind, these are again people looking at the data. What happened, right? Mm-hmm. So I really believe in digitalization, in Industry 4.0 and in all innovation. And we are really looking forward to use everything what's possible to automatize. but we will never resign and give up from experts and people that can finally decide if AI is not able to decide, or the score automatically performs scoring model, it's not giving us an answer.
Well, I think you're in a unique position in a way with the risk that you have associated with your data, whereas in a lot of other cases, it's the risk is at the recipient end. So I appreciate that. But Anand, please.
Yeah, there is always data and insights, right? And data will always be the fundamental or the foundational element that you need to have. Obviously, a lot of focus over the last few years has been how do we drive more insights? What tools do we use? So that's what I see. Certainly, I also see a need for having trusted data sources that you can rely on. And there aren't too many trusted sources of data that you can, have a high level of confidence. Otherwise, you have a garbage in, garbage out problem, right? The other piece that is also that I'm starting to see a trend is there are lots of data sources that are available, but often in many enterprises, those data sources sit in silos. So how do you link those data sources to drive more value, more insights, more connectivity? That's really where I see a big opportunity.
Well, that probably goes back to William's comment about blockchain, because that's probably where blockchain's coming, muted as being the solution. I won't say.
May I just pick up on that? Yes, data in silos. Yes, that is an issue today. Technology can handle it today. I mean, if one looks at Snowflake and the concept of Snowflake, and I'm even going to predict that APIs and JSON will disappear, but you can share data across that, and you can put silos, you can share data across silos, but the mind and the business acceptance to do that is still too far away at the moment. But I see it's going to happen.
Yeah, it is happening. I mean, certainly, within TransUnion and within the industry, when it comes to fraud prevention, there is a lot of data that we have, but to be able to pinpoint where are the fraud patterns, and I think in one of the panels before, they talked about fraud prevention being more proactive rather than reactive. The only way you're going to be able to do that is looking at linked data together rather than data as in silos, because you'll be able to see fraud rings show up in your data across different industries.
William?
Well, blockchain, after that speech, nothing else happened, which is great. But I just want to touch on something else. I think there is something which we have not explicitly discussed or mentioned over the course of the last couple of days. And I think we have flogged data, technology, AI almost to death. We have not seen the other end of the equation, which is what is required in the market. So I was just thinking, but this is with the benefit of hindsight, if we had CIMB or Maybank, which are the two largest banks in Malaysia, have a couple of users here to tell us, look, I'm waiting for this. Why aren't we getting this? And this goes back to what you were saying earlier, Neil, about slow pace of change, or whether we are changing at all. Now, the reason is because we exist in that ecosystem. We are not drivers of change. We are pushing something to the market. When the market requires something, we react to it. Unfortunately, that's primarily the way we do our business. We provide the information, we provide the service that is required in the market. We don't create something and say, well, this is beautiful. So the risk, the danger is that sometimes all of us, we are too consumed, too intoxicated by the sexiness of new technology. I'm not taking anything away from any of you who's at the forefront of new technology. That is absolutely required, but we just have to sometimes take a step back and see what does the market want, what is required. We can add on, but that is the first basic question. So just food for thought.
No, it's very relevant, and your thoughts are echoed by others, and I've taken them on board. I think the understanding the customer's perspective, it's always difficult to get them to these events, but we're going to do our best, I think, for the next one to do that, because it is, you have to have that whole ecosystem present to discuss it. And maybe even getting, representatives of the people whose data it is would be very useful as well, because as we've heard about, they're playing a more and more important role in the whole ecosystem, small businesses, consumers and the like. So I think it's a very sensible one, but yeah, thank you very much for that. So things changed. I'm glad to see that data is still valuable, because otherwise we're all out of business. But I think, so yes, some change. I still don't see radical changes in the business model, so I'll keep that one on my side. But and do we, we talked a lot about technology today, as you say, and yesterday. What's really on your mind as the biggest change at the moment? What's really? I know that's a bit of a throw in the question, but what is really, top of the agenda? What is the it's keeping the CEO awake at night type of question, really? What is there? Is there anything?
My biggest concern, it was mentioned twice yesterday, quantum computing. You can have that to supercharge your AI and create a fabulous algorithm. That is less of my concern. My concern is in security. All your encryption is going to come to waste when in minutes or seconds, it's going to be decrypted somewhere. So that's keeping us awake. We've had very high-level discussions. I know the timeline, from the experts, you expect 5 years' time, things that's going to fall into reality. But you never know how soon that's going to take place. It could happen 2 years down the road or next year. So that's something that's keeping me awake at night now.
May I? Okay, I agree with you 100%, and it didn't come up enough, I think, in the last few days as a discussion point, because it's like singularity. It's the crossover when the artificial intelligence is more capable than the mind. And we had some long discussions on that in Phoebus a couple of years ago. But that is my biggest concern, because all hell would break loose, basically. And everything you have and you do today, and you talk about data and structured data, etc., is going to be thrown out the window, extreme. But I wanted to come to that at the end rather than now.
That's okay. We can go where we need to go.
But yeah, I think everybody should be concerned about it. But the problem is we don't know. We really don't know enough about it and its consequences. And it's going to hit with a bang. And what I liked yesterday was the discussion on resilience, quantum resilience. It's the first time I'd heard that expression. But thank the Lord, we're talking about it now. And AI is going to have to be used to combat AI, which has come up several times. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So if I were to look at, from my perspective, 3 to 5 years out, certainly at TransUnion, a couple of things are top of mind for us. One is about providing consumers greater control about their information and who they share it with at what point. So things like self-identity or self-controlled identity is very important. Where there's obviously technology now available where the consumer gets to be in the driver's seat of managing their identity and who they share it with, what attributes of their identity they share it with. So that's certainly something. Second, also, there's an increased globalization. I know we talked this morning about tariffs and how that is impacting trade and such. But there is clearly globalization that is going on, and more companies have a bigger footprint than a specific market or a region. So how do we create things around digital identity and risk and KYC that spans multiple markets, right? Wherein they don't have to go to each provider in a given market and try to stitch partnerships. They can go to a provider who brings about that capability of addressing multiple markets in one integration. And then I talked about, there's a lot of data now that we have access to, certainly as credit bureaus. It is not limited to just the credit data, though that is certainly, first and foremost. We have a lot of alternate data sources, some of them really massive. But again, they tend to sit in silos. How do we start linking that and providing more insights and value to our customers? And lastly, there's been a lot of talk about analytics and Gen AI. That is certainly something that with that data, how do we provide a lot more value to our customers using those tools.
Good. Thank you.
That's also valid for us. And I think the important word is now how to leverage speed with quality and some really reasonability, because so much it's ongoing. There are so many changes. It requires really such a fast reaction to everything, but not everything it's really valid to put so much efforts in, because not all alternative data is really valuable. No, you cannot absorb everything and use it in the scoring models. So really to select what is worth to fight for and spend money in. Yes, like the colleague from CRIF was mentioning, Giacomo, to each of us is preparing long-term strategy. Now long-term means 2-3 years. It's already very long perspective. You cannot go beyond because you don't know what will be in 2-3 years. So where to put your money, what is worth really to consider, and how to select rubbish from really valuable information which is insightful in your scoring models and in your predictability, how to predict the risk.
Thank you. Another wobbler. I love throwing grenades into these things. They're always fun. So somebody comes to you and says, why should I use a credit bureau? Why should I use a business information provider? How do you sell yourself? What are your key attributes? I'm not talking about data and the amount of data and all the rest of it, but I'm really getting to this point about trust. It's come out quite a lot, so, and I think that's quite critical. And, are you used because you're trustworthy?
Yes, we are saying we are a great expert because clients can trust in our decisions, as we are also using this decision-making process and spend our own money in trade credit insurance, yes? So this is very reliable. And sometimes, it's funny because we have some clients, when I go to field with salespeople to listen what's going on, I can hear, I can use ChatGPT and it will give me the same information, but it's not true. There are really, you can maybe occasionally get some information, but if customer has real business in financial sector, in great, production area, where it operates with millions of euro or any other currency, data must be integrated into its own risk decisioning system. Everything must be integrated with ERP system, with commercial activity system and a CRM. So you cannot just pick some individual information in internet or in ChatGPT. Clients are expecting structured information, reliable scoring models, good warning system, monitoring, and predictive to get prediction if default can happen. And this is the area where business information companies are great in, and I think this is not changing.
I'd pick it up further on the trust. Trust is also based on knowledge. And if you have knowledge of that specific country, for instance, and as I mentioned, we really are active worldwide, but it's very interesting too, the knowledge that we gain. For instance, in India, there's about 70,000 companies that have to report XBRL every year. And in their XBRL, they report all their shareholdings across the world. And the big ones have quite big investments. And they report their financial statements of their subsidiaries across the world. And as a result of the Indian XBRL data, we have 3,000 financial statements from US companies that you would never get in the USA. And if I look at Switzerland, we have like 1,400 sets of financials that are publicly available, listed or public entities, and there's 250 financial statements of Indian companies in Swiss that are Swiss companies, and the same thing in Hong Kong. The knowledge that you gain by operating, and several people mentioned it, that it's not just one country or a set of countries that you're looking at the world, is the knowledge that you pick up on that. You go to Africa, we talk about Africa. You look at Botswana, company registry data. Buried in there on a PDF is a certificate incorporation of BVI companies. Never thought we'd find anything like that. So here you go. China is investing in Africa since years, as we all know. Most of it goes over like a BVI or a Cayman Island company, and then you think you can't go any further. And then all of a sudden, you're finding this in the public records of Botswana, or in Kenya is another example, that this company is owned this way. Now, that's nothing you can find on a research, but if you're collecting data across the world, this type of richness is coming out, and that's the value, coming back to what question before, is the data. And there's all sorts of matrices that you don't know about until you get your hands deep into it to find out. But it is trust. And if I look what was said on the panel before, and we're talking about SMEs, which Fico was talking about the value of that data, you can only go so far with that. And then you have to add all these other factors on, which Dorothea was talking about before. But that's how I look at it.
Good, thank you. It's very interesting.
So when I think about a credit bureau, I think of two words, trust and brand. And obviously we, in each of the markets that we have been present in, we are probably one of the 2 or 3 credit bureaus in the market. And there is a lot of, trust, but we also been very, very particular about managing the data that we have with strict governance, making sure that we are running in accordance with the regulations and the rules in the market. And obviously we have produced a lot of tools that customers can leverage, but there needs to be a broker in the market who gets data from different data sources and manages it, and that's the role that credit bureaus play, right? So much so that we have built that brand over the years across multiple markets. And there's talk about earlier today about consortium for fraud data. We are now floating the idea of a fraud bureau, very similar to a credit bureau, right? Where again, because of the trust and the brand that we enjoy, customers are more willing to share fraud data with us, that we can then create value for everybody in the ecosystem.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I'm choosing not to flatter ourselves by saying we are good and trusted. I'm not sure if all of you or some of you are aware, increasingly there are rules, regulations, for example, to make it mandatory for use of bureau for new credit, for review of credit, and now for employment screenings. So whether they like us, trust us, or whether we are good, well, we have to be good, they have to use us. So that's only part of the reason why they are using us, which is mandatory. And of course, for all of us, what we also try to do is to enhance the offerings that we have for our users, for our banks, for our members. And that has helped because what we have seen is that while the regulation is for an annual screening, for example, you find that some of them are doing quarterly checks because they have seen value in the offerings that we have for the market.
Okay. So let's go in a slightly different way. So we're moving towards the future, obviously, in all of this. But what do you see, and picking up on William's point, do you see a radical change in the offering that you provide? What are the opportunities? I mean, fraud is always been one opportunity, and employment screening, but are there other opportunities out there? And then this is where you give away trade secrets, probably. No, I'm only joking, but I'm sure people are interested to know where what the new markets are. And I don't, if you're happy to do that. If not, then just give me a blank look and I'll move on. But
may I think again, it's the data, it's the use of the data, and where the party in need of the data comes and looks for it. And when you're traditionally in the B2B world, then you probably got a reservoir of data and knowledge that's more current. So therefore, it's more the type of decisions or the use they want to make of this data. What we've seen in recent years is these intermediary platforms that support like Alibaba sales or online sales, Amazon, where they have a new client coming online, and it's often SMEs today, but there's still a lot of registered companies are doing business on these platforms today, where they need to know, does this company exist, first of all? And the company is giving data in when they're making the application, and what's happening is they're shooting just that across and asking just for confirmation, does it exist, yes or no? Is it active, yes or no? That's it and gone. So this is a very low price transaction, but it's used for a verification. And then it increases from there, depending on the depth of knowledge they want. We have another client in Dubai, actually, who have developed software for opening bank accounts, which is digital. And the client has to upload their certificate of incorporation, enter the data on their company, and in the background, they're shooting just that base data to us to say, is this really true what these people are giving us, even if it's a scanned document? Obviously, they go further because they're doing passport verification, and the Middle East is, as we said before, is really a difficult market, and you've got to be very careful on the procedures you do. But those are the type of uses that are being made today that were not being made 5-6 years ago.
So it's almost data fragmentation, isn't it? I mean, we talked about it, but you know, well, in fact, we had an ICCR meeting. It's sort of like not the traditional credit report it's not needed anymore. Business information report. They're picking, aren't they? Yeah. Based on that, which is obviously where the API.
And that's what you have to offer. You have to. Your data has to be in packets of data. It's like a menu that you choose the pieces you want from it to answer the questions that you want.
Yeah, time it's money. People want to get precise answer to their needs. So if you are in charge of procurement, you want to have supply chain product. If you are a risk director, you want to have assessment. If you are compliance director, you want to have KYC compliance. So commercial, just marketing data. Therefore, the future is in responding precisely to the needs of the user, whatever it is.
Which is what William was saying before. We are there to serve almost. We're not really creating new products out of it. They're asking us to serve them in the way they want the answers.
Yeah, I think that was back to my comment about the innovation and product development. It's not. It's sort of almost reverse engineering back into sort of individual data items, isn't it?
Yeah. If you look at the whole space of digital identity, that is starting to become more and more important, because it's really, as you move towards digital, every interaction that you do, you have to prove yourself that it is who you are, right? Whether it's applying for credit, doing an e-commerce purchase, even going into your gaming or a gambling website and trying to do a transaction. So there's a lot of opportunities that I see, particularly for the credit bureaus. Traditionally, we have largely played in the financial services and the insurance vertical. Now we're starting to expand into things like auto and telco and gaming as an example, right? So there's a lot of opportunities, certainly when it comes to identity, and obviously wherever you have identity, you also have associated fraud and fraud prevention that comes into play. So that's an opportunity. The other one I touched on earlier is about globalization and how certainly companies which have a global footprint or multi-market footprint have, they can leverage, their presence and capabilities across multiple regions.
But that helps a lot with this global world. It really helps. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because maybe that globalization will pick up because it seems to have been more prevalent in the business information world. It's taken a real long time, too long on the consumer side, and I think that's going to have to change. But and William, you've been taking a lead on a lot of that as well, haven't you?
And to answer your question, Neil, are we all trying to change? So the short answer is yes. We are trying to change, trying to push the boundary, and we are trying to ride on the coattail of trust. People see us as a trusted party. We're trying to take leverage on that and try to expand our offerings, because that's probably the only way we can expand realistically. But the pace of change is slow. So sometimes at night I console myself that my pace of change is faster than the captain of a tanker making a three-pointer at the Suez Canal.
Good, thank you very much for that. And let's just pause there. Any questions for our esteemed leaders, fellow board members? No? Yeah, it's obviously lunchtime.
The audience is tired.
Yeah, lunchtime and tiredness, and they're fed up with me talking. I think that's what it's all about. Ingrid, thank you,
We can
Ingrid.
always rely on you. Adrian, you are usually the one asking questions.
I've caught the production team on. I didn't tell them.
She's
about
obliged, yes, to ask.
No, because I'm also a veteran, let me say it like this. What I've missed is as a value of our industry. So we are producing golden trusted records. So the golden records, because the value from my perspective we have, it doesn't matter which kind of source is coming around, which kind of additional information we are going to use, doesn't matter which kind of services we provide. We are the one who are really verifying the data, because this is where we get the complaints, or even as a credit insurer, so you have to pay for it. So I think this is most of the value, or the biggest value we provide, that everybody, that we are the final source who is really checking whether the data are true or not. And even if I'm looking into the future now, and we learned a lot about deep fake identification, and we learned as well today in the session before from Giacomo, if you use Gen AI or AI, that at the end you have to control AI, that you really get the information, the relevant or the true information out of it. I think this is something which is not spoken out as well in all the marketing messages we give, because we say, okay, we provide a report, we provide identity so that you can be trusted, but everything what is behind, so we are looking into the technology so that we can really deliver the truth. So that was just a statement from my perspective. So how I see it as a comment, so please comment if you like.
No, I mean, I think
so you see my passion for the industry, it doesn't matter which kind of B2B, B2C.
Ingrid's doing the panel next year, not me. No, I think it's, and there is a point there about the fact of, we focus on data and providing data, but I think it's the role, isn't it? It's that cleanliness, it's that quality. We've talked about that over the last few days, so I think that's very relevant. I'm going to sort of, based on the fact nobody's, apart from Ingrid, is asking me questions, I'm getting a very clear signal that I need to wrap soon. Let's just, I'm going to put you all on the spot now and say, you're sitting here in front of all these people in different stages of development, some just starting, some sort of very well into that. So, I'd like a key takeaway for the future. You can phrase it how you like. What do they need to look out for? What are the opportunities? Whatever. Just a takeaway from each of you. And I'll keep waffling until one of you says, I'm happy to take that question. But I think if I think it's always nice. I always like to end these conferences where people can go away and think, yeah, I get that, and I maybe need to think about that as I go forward. So, a bit of free advice.
May I?
Yes, you may.
Okay. I think as a manager, and you're responsible for decision-making in data in a business information company, I'm talking from business information if you want, but you've got to know the details of what your company is doing. Any manager today that lets their finger off not knowing what this technology will do is not in the right place. I think you should maybe go get another job if you want. But it's most important that you understand clearly to the detail and you have your head around these developments in technology. I put myself into the technology world 7 years ago. I took myself out of the general management side and I'm fully involved in it. So I follow it really, really deeply. And we went through hallucinations with data. Giacomo talked about it a bit today, but actually you can control most of that today. There are these, you probably heard these AI agents we talked about, and you do not develop a system anymore. You develop steps in a system and you put things together in processes. So as long as your mind is in control and you understand what you're doing there, you're not going to go too far wrong. And you can eliminate this chance of getting these stupid answers back. So I say, please roll up your sleeves, get your head deep into this side of it, and there's a load of opportunities in front of you there, wherever they may be in this business information world. But please do that. If you think you're just a manager and you've got I heard a conversation this week. Somebody said, oh, my IT manager will take care of that. Fine, let him do it. But I see, sorry, I have to throw another thing at you. I see what else is happening. A lot of these larger organizations, they have their development teams, and you have people that have been writing scripts for years and code for this and code for that. Sorry, it is dying. Why has Microsoft let 6,000 people go? Because most of the code they can write automatically today. They don't need these people anymore. We have several development centers, and it's got to the point that I need certain specialists who are interested in learning what is AWS Glue, what is this, what can I do here, and if a person resists that, I'm going to look to maybe suggest they go look for another job, basically. And these people are your blockers. If you rely totally on them, they're going to block you. They're going to guide what your business should be, and it's not going to go where you want it to. So what we've done is we're taking analysts, people at a university, they learn Python, they use ChatGPT to write Python code coming out of university today. And if they're interested in being an analyst, then they can also be a developer. And we are actually cut out. Dorothy, I was talking about 5 steps in the process of credit reports. In software development, you used to have the analyst, the person who wrote the documentation, and et cetera, I'm taking out as much as I can there, that I can get that business person to be able to influence the code development to get the data, exact data that I want out of it at the end of the day. And those are the sort of ideas you have to carry with you and implement. You do that faster than somebody else, you're going to win. If you don't, somebody might mess up your business for you.
Integrated IT, maybe. Yes. I don't know. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I agree with you. And from my perspective, we as managers, we have to constantly learn, be always open to get new knowledge. I am more than 30 years in with professional experience from many companies. But last year I graduated from postgraduate study in data science and big data. So I went to university again because I thought this is something what I need to learn very well and to be practitioner afterwards about this, because I really believe in the knowledge, in being up to speed, being able to use all the latest tools and stay really open and learn from others and listen to others. Because this is today a very important skill, I believe. Be able and capable to listen and draw conclusions, take decisions, of course, and then have proper resources, the best people to work with you.
So I would echo what Adrian said in terms of technology and the importance of it as we move forward. It is going to be largely a technology-driven industry as we go forward, and so understanding those technologies at a reasonably good level of detail is going to be absolutely critical, right? So that's number one. The second, I think functional roles in organizations are going to be more cross-functional, meaning you could be an IT or a technology person, but you need to be as good in terms of strategy, in terms of go-to-market, to make the product really successful. So having that end-to-end vision of what are the things that you need, skill sets to be successful, I think is important.
So key takeaway, right? So go back to the basics. Take care of your people. No matter how powerful AI technology is, there's always a human in the loop who will control it.
There you go. So, very good. Okay. Thank you very much. So Thank you, panel. I hope I haven't sort of hit you with too many sort of brick wall questions, but I appreciate you bearing with me, and I think hopefully it makes a good dialogue. So I appreciate all the different perspectives. So please, again, just join me in thanking the panel for their time. Thank you very much. I think we're going to do a quick panel photo, and then I shall do the closing. Quite right, too. I think, are we in the middle? I want to take that back screen off into the generic one, please. That's it, thank you.
To the left.
The left, sorry.
To the right. Sorry.
Oh, to the right, whatever. I've technology enabled it at my left from my right. Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Yes, okay, so thank you for all staying with us for that last session. I do hope you found it useful. Just please, if you get a minute before you disappear off onto your flights or wherever you're going, please give us some feedback via the app. It's very helpful for us to design. We've already had some good feedback from that panel about some of the topics for next year. Also, please, if you do have a minute and you haven't already QR'd that, this is to do with the technology forum. We do really appreciate. We've got some good feedback already. I think we're about 45, 7, whatever. It'd be good to get a bit more. So. Please have a go at that, and while I closed the conference. So our journey hopefully has made sense over the last couple of days in terms of where we've gone and what we've been looking at, starting, as I said, from that general sort of view around technology, digital finance and commerce, and the two and how they link together, having some very good and opening comments from the ministry and in Malaysia, and obviously working all the way through the technology into its application, looking at some of those core issues around technology, around cybersecurity, looking at the regulation and the role that's playing alongside cybersecurity and the growth in digital finance and commerce, the ESG aspect of it, sustainability and technology in that, and then obviously, the data and the analytics and the panel we've had. So hopefully it's all hung together well for you, and that you've seen the story and the journey we've been going on. So that's what we like to try and do, so it all hangs together. As I say, please provide some feedback on that. We continue our journey in working on the community as BIA, and we thank you as members for being part of the community. If you're not a member, we would welcome you to the community, so please feel free to get in touch. And I hope if you're not a member and you've attended this for the first time, it will convince you to do that. For our members who attended, we hope we're continuing to deliver value to you, but we're always open to suggestions and what more we can do. So please continue to give feedback to us on what we're doing, because we want to be here for the next 20 years. And we want to be, I won't be standing here in 20 years' time, that's for sure. If I am, it'll be a miracle. But I really do we want to make sure that we're here to support you in a very important industry, as we've just found out. So that's very much from my perspective on that. Just to let you know, next event for us, our next community event will be our leadership forum, which is open to members, which we hold now and are holding traditionally in November. We're actively working on trying to do that around the Singapore FinTech Forum. So that's going to be mid-November. So we'll be communicating as soon as we can out about that and inviting you to attend that. Hopefully that will work with a number of you who go to the Singapore FinTech Festival. And we hope to see a lot of you there. This conference is now annual. That's why I've got more grey hair than I used to have. It's not every 2 years now, it's annually. I hope and I believe with the turnout we've had this year that the annual holding of this event is important, and we will therefore be planning the event similar time next year, but more towards the end of June, because we want to get a few more people involved that haven't been able to make it because of conflicts of things early in June. So look out for that. We are looking for a venue for that. So if any of you are interested in supporting us, coming to your country and bringing this prestigious event to your country, and that's what we try to do, because it does help sometimes if you are, as a member, working with regulators, trying to promote the industry in your country, then please feel free to come forward and suggest that. We're very open to offers about location. I'm very happy to go where we can to assist members and where it might be of obviously interest to other members. So that's really the way forward. I'm going to just close now by really thanking a few people, if I may, which is, I think, only right. One of the, this thing doesn't happen on its own. This year we've taken an extra step of asking our event organisers to also organise the registration and payments. So Pat and his team at IDEX, I don't know if Pat's with us, are you there? You're there, Pat. A real big thank you to you for stepping up extra. Thank you. And I certainly, if you're running an event in this part of the world, he has best recommendation from me. Certainly get in contact with Pat. But don't make sure you're not doing it when I'm doing my event. That's all I can say. But no, thank you very much to that. Thank you to all our speakers. We've had the biggest ever lineup of speakers. You've seen the size of some of our panels. I was a little bit in two minds about the size of the panels, but I think they work well. There's a lot of good content. So thank you to all our speakers. Those of you who are still here, thank you. Big round of applause from me. And obviously our sponsors and our supporting partners basically of CETOS and Forrester, who've helped us with our speakers and presentations. Our bronze sponsor, CBS in Singapore. Our silver sponsors, which is Cedar Rose, TransUnion, and I'm going to forget one, which is Credence. This is where I get a bit tired at this point in the conference. And our gold sponsors, obviously CRIF, Experian, and Optisol. Thank you very much. And our overall sponsor, which is Worldbox. Thank you, Adrian, for that. Thank you to the rest of my colleagues in the BIIA team, Peter and Ingrid, doing a lot of work. I stand up here and take all the kudos, but these guys work hard to get you here and to make sure you're comfortable while you're here. So Peter and Ingrid, big thank you to you. And of course, the biggest thank you is to you as delegates for coming. You know, without you, this event doesn't happen. And I truly hope that you've had a great time. As I say, please give us some feedback. Please join us at our other events. Please keep looking out on using our BIA resources, our newsletters and the like. Please giving us feedback. And as I say, if you're not a member, you know where we are. And on that note, I wish you safe journey wherever you're going. Oh, there's one last thing I've forgotten to do. I really do welcome and thank the people of Malaysia for all their support. It's wonderful. Truly a very friendly nation. So I'm sure we'll be back to have another conference here. But as I say, for the rest of you, safe journey home. If you're staying for the next few days, I understand the festival is starting this weekend, so it's going to be quite fun. If you're going home, get home now, because the festival is starting. But I wish you a safe journey whenever you're leaving, and look forward to seeing you very soon. Thank you very much. Sorry, I forgot to mention, lunch is served down at the JB Terraces, so please join us for lunch, the usual place that we went to yesterday. Thank you very much.